Buenos días, ¿cómo están? Llevamos ratito ya y estamos bien contentos de ver el anfiteatro del edificio de administración de empresas lleno. ¿Cuántos de los que nos visitan son de nuestra comunidad universitaria aquí del recinto universitario de Mayagüez? O sea que la mayoría son visitantes externos. Pues mi nombre es el doctor Jonathan Muñoz, soy el decano interino de estudiantes y hoy les voy a estar dando un saludito en nombre de nuestra rectora, la arquitecta Wilma Santiago Gabrielini. Voy a hacer un switch al inglés por nuestros invitados. Good morning to all of you. Welcome to the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. In the name of the Acting Chancellor, Professor Santiago, I welcome all of you to this writing workshop sponsored by the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture, the University of Puerto Rico, and FEMA. While in the past, here at the university, we have hosted other writing workshops. Today's one is very special because it will focus in arts and humanities. While when we think about writing proposals, most of people think about hard science, NSF, and other funding agencies, but there are other opportunities. We are delighted today to have speakers from the Institutes of Museum, Library Services, the National Endowment of the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. To them, thanks to be here, we look forward to seeing how Puerto Rico increased his participation in requesting federal funding from these programs. To the persons and our guests and our faculties that are here, I have a small message for you. Cultivating an ongoing and positive relation with funding agencies led to additional grants down the road. In the literature has been established that participating and attending to this kind of workshops increase your chances to get funding. So the message is very simple. Today, listen carefully, don't be shy, and all the questions that you think that are necessary. Welcome and thanks to be here.
Buenos días a todos y gracias por decir presente a Mayagüez, en Mayagüez, en nuestro recinto. Me uno a las palabras del doctor Jonathan Muñoz, en representación de la rectora, y él, nuestro decano interino de estudiantes. Más adelante, pues, vamos a tener, ¿verdad?, el taller. Les queremos informar que estamos transmitiendo en vivo en YouTube para las personas que no han podido asistir, que puedan beneficiarse de esta interesante mañana que vamos a tener aquí. Durante la tarde van a haber sesiones individuales con los funcionarios de las diferentes agencias en el salón 202A, que eso es cerquita por aquí, así que una vez se concluya el evento, pues ellos darán instrucciones nuevamente. Les quiero presentar al doctor David Santiago, en representación de la Facultad de Administración de Empresas y el Centro de Negocios y Desarrollo Económico del Colegio de Mayagüez.
Buenos días. Qué bueno que el micrófono. Disculpen mi voz, es asma, no es influenza. Gracias por estar aquí. Gracias Isabel y a los compañeros de Instituto de Cultura, National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, Museums and Libraries, and any others. Gracias por estar aquí. Gracias por aprovechar estas oportunidades de parte de la doctora Mariel Nieves, decana de aquí de la Facultad de Administración de Empresas, del doctor José Vega, director del Centro de Negocios y Desarrollo Económico, donde colaboro. Bienvenidos. Como profesor del área de non-profits y propuestas que soy aquí en Empresas, les doy la bienvenida a todos, pues les felicito por aprovechar estas oportunidades que son esporádicas y a veces uno se entera como de momento. Todavía estoy recibiendo textos de gente que se están enterando. Se está transmitiendo por YouTube. Me mandaron un enlace, no sé cómo luego se podrá compartir, porque yo no lo sabía, me acabo de enterar. Perdón. Bueno, yo lo tengo aquí, yo ahorita se lo doy, porque no puedo mandárselo a todos. No sé, con el listado de asistencia se puede enviar porque se queda grabado y después lo pueden ver. Va a estar en YouTube grabado, eso se queda grabado ahí. Con la lista de asistencia se pueden enviar. Bienvenidos, como les decía, hay nuevas oportunidades en el área de grants, especialmente después del proceso, ¿no?, del desastre, la recuperación. Creo que es un momento muy oportuno para aprovechar esas oportunidades. Es una oportunidad que el tercer sector no había visto en mucho tiempo. hay que capacitarse para aprovecharlas y en eso los felicito por estar aquí. Veo gente de municipios, veo gente de las non-profits, hasta que coge clases conmigo, han tomado clases conmigo. Los felicito por estar aquí y una vez más, bienvenidos. Aprovechen la oportunidad, los colegas van a estar luego disponibles para contestar preguntas. Bienvenidos al Antes y Ahora y Siempre Colegio. Gracias, buen día.
En este momento les quiero presentar a la señora Alida Arismendi, quien viene en representación del honorable alcalde José Guillermo Rodríguez.
Muy buenos días. A nombre del Gobierno Municipal de Mayagüez, de nuestro alcalde honorable José Guillermo Rodríguez, queremos darle la bienvenida a nuestra ciudad de Mayagüez, al colegio, hoy aquí en el auditorio de Administración de Empresas, donde vamos a tener la oportunidad de poder disfrutar y de poder sacar el último insumo de este maravilloso taller de las propuestas federales, de cómo nosotros llenar estas propuestas federales. Así que sean todos bienvenidos y les invitamos que luego de haber recibido este seminario, pues puedan disfrutar también de los atractivos que tiene nuestra hermosa ciudad, su gastronomía y los diferentes lugares de interés turístico. Sean todos bienvenidos.
En esta ocasión les dejo con la doctora Albeira Rodríguez del Instituto de Cultura.
Buenos días a todos. A nombre del director ejecutivo, el profesor Carlos Ruiz Cortés, y el Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña, le damos la cordial bienvenida a cada uno de ustedes. Agradecemos la visita y disposición del Institute of Museum and Library Services, National Endowment for the Arts, Andy Mathis, y el National Endowment for the Humanities. Alineado a la política pública del gobernador de Puerto Rico, este taller busca ofrecer ayuda y las herramientas para incrementar lo que es la cantidad de propuestas suministradas a fondos federales que se solicita y se reciben en Puerto Rico mediante unas propuestas competitivas, prestándoles la oferta a cada agencia, municipio, artistas y sus respectivos requisitos. Buscamos maximizar las oportunidades federales, incentivando y capacitando a recursos humanos, y yo le estaba hablando con Brian sobre la necesidad que todos tenemos de conocer cómo redactar estas propuestas. Esta iniciativa está relacionada a la misión del Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña, la cual es investigar, conservar, promover y divulgar lo que es la cultura puertorriqueña en su diversidad y complejidad. Esperamos que este taller sea beneficioso para adelantar sus proyectos y fortalecer lo que es el arte y la cultura en Puerto Rico. Le agradecemos también a FIMA, a la Universidad de Puerto Rico, recinto de Mayagüez, de la Sociedad de Administradores e Investigación. Muchas gracias.
Para los que han preguntado, en este momento se está transmitiendo en vivo y el enlace es a través de la página de nuestro recinto, uprm.edu. El enlace de este momento, luego entonces vamos a enviar por correo electrónico el enlace grabado. Pero ahora mismo, si quieren compartir por mensaje de texto a conocidos que puedan y lo pueden ver, uprm.edu, y ahí está el enlace a la transmisión en vivo. Bueno, pues ya vamos a comenzar, ¿verdad?, a lo que vinimos. Queremos dar la bienvenida al señor Brian Lusher.
Hello and good morning. My name is Brian Lusher, and I work for the National Endowment for the Arts. You can hear? Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. My name is Brian Lusher, and I work for the National Endowment for the Arts. I'm also here with Andy Mathis, who represents the state arts agencies across the country and works with them at the National Endowment for the Arts. And it is our great pleasure to be here today. And I also want to thank you for listening to us in English. Thank you for that. Are there any arts endowment grantees in the audience today? Anyone? Okay. Well, we want to boost those numbers. Absolutely, because we are able to fund roughly 45% of the applications we receive, and we would welcome more applications from Puerto Rico. Our goal here today is to demystify the National Endowment for the Arts and our application process. We want you to leave this session understanding the funding opportunities available to you. We also want you to know that we at the National Endowment for the Arts are very approachable, and we love to hear from people considering applying to our agency. We want to help you to be successful through the grant process. We want you to feel comfortable reaching out to us with questions. For example, which program would be the best fit for your application? Today's presentation will provide for you a general overview of our agency, as well as our grant programs and tips on how to apply. And we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards. In fact, we brought lists for you of all of our specialists, their areas of expertise, and their contact information, and we will email to you information related to this presentation today about the presentation itself, as well as lists of our discipline specialists and their contact information. So what is the National Endowment for the Arts? It is an independent federal agency. It was founded in 1965. We are the only arts funder in America that supports arts in all 50 states and the U.S. territories. And in fact, we are also the only funder to make arts awards in all 435 congressional districts. We also partner with state and other federal agencies and departments, including areas like agriculture, health, transportation, and economic development. What does the National Endowment for the Arts do? Well, we give people across America opportunities to participate in the arts by doing several things. We award grants. We also conduct funding and arts research. We conduct and fund arts research. We manage national initiatives, and we offer free resources like weekly podcasts on our website. An important thing to discuss in the very beginning is eligibility for application to the National Endowment for the Arts. There are certain requirements that you must meet in order to be eligible to apply. You must have a 3-year history of programming by the application deadline. For some categories, this must be 3 years of arts programming. You must also be in compliance with all reporting requirements from any previous National Endowment for the Arts award. It's also important to have a Dun & Bradstreet number. And you must also be registered with grants.gov, as well as the System for Award Management, which is SAM.gov. It's important to remember also that our grants for organizations require a non-federal match of at least $1 for each dollar that we award. In other words, an organization receiving a $10,000 grant must provide at least $10,000 towards the project from non-federal sources, making for a $20,000 project. The cost share match may come from any combination of cash or in-kind third-party contributions. The match does not have to be in hand at the time of application. However, at the time of application, we ask that you indicate from which sources you intend to seek funding. The project activities would be for the $20,000. If you are asking for $10,000, the other $10,000 that we require for match would be a $20,000 project. You're welcome. So what are the types of organizations that we fund? This is very important. We include nonprofit 501c3s, as well as local governments, such as Puerto Rico's municipalities. We also accept applications from nonprofit educational institutions and tribal communities. It's also important to know the types of projects that we do not fund, or the types of activities that we do not fund. What we support are projects. The full list of the types of projects that we do not fund are published in the guidelines on our website at www.arts.gov. This includes general operating support. Applicants need to propose specific projects. We don't support facility construction, facility purchase, or facility renovation, as well as grants to individuals, except for literature fellows, or individual schools or fiscal sponsors. Okay? The list of projects that we do fund is tremendously large. Pretty much anything else that isn't included in this exclusion list. So, in other words, we would support concerts and performances in disciplines such as dance, opera, theater, or music. We would support festivals, literary translations, arts education, folk and traditional arts. Truly, so many opportunities for us to provide support so long as we are in accordance with the types of organizations and activities we can fund. And we have a number of funding categories. The first is partnership agreements. These are only available to state government arts agencies like the ICP and to 6 U.S. regional arts organizations. Through these partnership agreements, the Arts Endowment makes arts available in many more communities than it could through our direct programs. In fact, many of you who may have received ICP support in the past are likely receiving Arts Endowment support that they re-grant. Funding opportunities for organizations include Artworks, Challenge America, and Our Town. These are the largest grants we offer, and nonprofit organizations receive the bulk of our direct funding. We also have grants for individuals. However, they are limited to literature fellowships, though we also offer recognition to jazz artists through our NEA Jazz Master's Program and to folk and traditional artists through our National Heritage Fellowship Program. These latter two areas require nominations. They aren't part of our regular application process. As an example, you may be aware of Puerto Rico recipients of our National Heritage Fellowship Awards. One of our recent 2017 Folk Heritage awardees from Puerto Rico, Modesto Cepeda, is a Grand Master of Bomba and Plena traditions. And his father received the same award in 1983. And they truly exemplify what it means to be carrying out important cultural and artistic traditions. And now we'll go back to the grant categories. Artworks is our largest funding stream, and we typically make around 2,000 grants each year to organizations throughout the United States and the territories. This is one of the categories that requires a 3-year history of arts programming. Applications are submitted to one of our 15 discipline programs at either the February or the July deadline, but not both. Funding is available for all stages of the artistic processes, including creation, presentation and exhibition, arts education and enrichment, as well as services to the field, such as conferences and professional development. Also, we fund both large and small projects. We fund existing and new projects. We also fund projects that take place in any part of the 50 states, Washington, D.C., or the territories. And as a reminder, all grants require at least a 1-to-1 cost share match, and they range from $10,000 to $100,000 and can be up for up to 2 years. We have 15 program disciplines that we fund. You could apply to one of these programs based on the content of your project. Each discipline program has a dedicated staff, and we are more than happy to guide you towards the right program and to assist you throughout the application process. Contact information can be found on our website and on the handouts that were brought along and that we will forward to you via email after this presentation today. Each discipline program has different project types, and they're listed on the program guidelines on our website. Applications should be for a specific project or a set of activities, and not an entire season or year of programming. Specific projects and activities. Okay. There are 2 artworks deadlines per year, February and July. And different project types may be funded at each deadline. Also, artistic communities and design have a February deadline only. Challenge America primarily supports small and mid-sized communities. Small and mid-sized organizations to extend the reach of art to underserved populations. We define that as those whose opportunity to experience the arts are limited to geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. And there are 3 eligible project types in this category. The first is bringing in 1 or more guest artists. The second would be a collaborative marketing campaigns, such as cultural tourism. The third are public art projects. These are primarily visual arts projects, such as murals or sculptures. They are developed through a meaningful community engagement process. All of the project types funded in Challenge America are also eligible for funding under the Artworks program. In fact, the Artworks category can actually award larger grants and has 2 deadlines instead of 1. We can help you decide which grant program to apply for. Challenge America is one of the categories that requires a 3-year history of arts programming to be eligible. And remember that in Challenge America, all awards are $10,000, but they still require a 1-to-1 cost share match. The next program is Our Town. It's the National Endowment for the Arts Creative Placemaking Grant Program. These grants support projects that integrate arts, culture, and design activities into efforts that strengthen communities. There are 2 types of funding available in Our Town. For place-based projects that contribute to the quality of life in local communities through arts engagement, cultural planning, and design. These projects require a partnership between a local government and a nonprofit. One of the partners must be arts, a culture, or a design organization, and grants range from $25,000 to $200,000. The second type of funding for projects in Our Town that build on and disseminate knowledge about how to leverage arts, culture, and design as mechanisms for strengthening communities. These grants range from $25,000 to $100,000. Those are usually for membership services organizations working to undertake projects and educate their members. The deadline to apply is usually in August. And it's worth exploring Our Town a little bit. There is a special section of our website. There's a special section of our website entitled Exploring Our Town. It features the different kinds of projects that this program funds, and you can search by project setting. For instance, maybe you are a large, a mid-sized, or a small urban project that you're thinking about. Perhaps it's rural, perhaps it's tribal project. You may also search it by project type. Okay, you may look for things such as asset mapping, community design, cultural district, public arts, and more. You can also search by states. If you're interested in this grant program, it's a really wonderful resource where you can see how previous organizations have structured their projects and how the grant process has gone, and whether or not there may have been challenges that can inform your own process in terms of applying for Our Town. Our research grants offer support for projects in 2 areas. Support for research projects that examine the value and or the impact of arts. These grants range from $10,000 to $30,000. Furthermore, support for research projects that test the impacts of the arts via experimental designs. These are usually at universities or other research institutions, and these grants range from $30,000 to $100,000. And research has one deadline per year. It's usually in October. The Research and Analysis Department at the National Endowment for the Arts also releases research, and it's a core function of our agency. Visit arts.gov to find analysis and the reports. A couple of examples are the Survey of Public Participation in the Arts, as well as economic development of the arts on national and state levels. Outside of grants to organizations, we have grants to individuals. Creative fellowships for individuals are in fiction, poetry, and creative nonfiction, and they enable the recipients to set aside time for writing, research, travel, and general career advancement. Every year they alternate between prose and poetry. These non-matching grants are for $25,000. The deadline is usually in March of each year. Also, there are individual fellowships for translation. They are every year, and they enable the recipients to translate work in prose, poetry, or drama from other languages into English. These are non-matching grants, and they may be for $12,500 or for $25,000. The deadline is usually in December of each year. And before we dive into a few more details, we have a short video that I hope will work.
Through its grants, the National Endowment for the Arts supports arts projects in every community across the United States, including yours. To ensure grants are distributed fairly, selecting recipients is a multi-step process. First, an organization submits an application, which includes their project's budget and plans to match grant funding, at least one-to-one with other donations. Then, panels of experts, not NEA staff, evaluate submissions. They assess the artistic excellence of the project as well as artistic merit, like potential impact on the field and whether it's reaching an artistically underserved community. Then panels pass their recommendations to the National Council on the Arts, which is comprised of federally appointed artists and arts leaders. They review the grants and send them to the NEA's chairman, who makes the final decision. The NEA notifies the organizations whose applications are recommended, and then the real work begins, bringing the project to life so you and your community can experience it.
I am so glad that video worked. Just to summarize, though, there are 3 levels to our grant application review process. The first level of review is by citizen panel. It's made up of experts in the field. You'll have an opportunity later to let us know if you would like to be a panelist. We at the National Endowment for the Arts are always looking for new panelists, and we're excited to have you. It's also a great way to learn how applications are reviewed and what the criteria are. Our panels also are diverse in terms of geography, gender, ethnicity, and expertise. So please, if you are interested, consider being a panelist with us in the future and offer your ability to do so. Panel recommendations are then submitted to the National Council on the Arts, and where they are reviewed and approved. The Council then makes its recommendations to the chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts. The chairman provides the final review and approval for grant applications. Also, if applicants are not recommended for a grant, we always encourage them to find out by calling the appropriate discipline specialists what the feedback was. If you do submit an application and it is not recommended, you know, we're always sorry about that because we're only allowed to fund 45% of the applications that we receive. However, the feedback from panel review is often very helpful for applicants in understanding how better to write or improve an application for the following year. So please, in the application process, always ask for feedback about how it was reviewed. Also, to find the guidelines for all of our grant opportunities, the Mothership homepage, okay, it is www.arts.gov. Select Apply for a Grant from our main page. You can see the arrow. Also, see the bottom drop-down button, Recent Grants? That is a really great resource that can let you know the types of organizations that apply to the National Endowment for the Arts, and it also can let you know what types of projects that the National Endowment for the Arts funds. It's a vast trove of very good information, especially if you are considering applying to the National Endowment for the Arts for the first time. There's a tremendous amount of information there, and I encourage you to look at it. Also, on the far right, the contacts page. It has a list for every staff member we have, according to discipline. It has their contact information, phone numbers, emails. We receive phone calls all the time, and we encourage you to do so, because it is the specific questions that you can ask the discipline staff as you consider your application that really will help make the application as good as it can be. Okay, so we have a number of helpful hints when you're considering applying to the National Endowment for the Arts. The first is complete your registrations as soon as possible. Also, if you have already registered, make sure that your registrations will not expire before the next current deadline. Okay. And again, please contact our staff with questions. They're very knowledgeable, and they always entertain questions, and does anybody else hear that? Thought it was just me. But please contact our staff. Related to each discipline, they can help you do a very deep dive into the application process, and they can answer any questions you have. I'll just move. Hold, please. Oh, okay. Okay, so it is me, and I have to reach closer to the microphone. Okay. Hello? Okay, thank you. Well, you know, we're the NEA. We fund performances, and we can roll with the punches. Thank you. The show must go on. So anyway, as I was saying, please contact our staff. They're very knowledgeable. They can provide lots of information on questions you have about the application process. They have been through this before. They know how to address the questions that you will have. And we have 15 discipline programs with numerous staff for each one. We love new applicants. We love to help applicants who are just starting the process, and we encourage you to do so very strongly. Also, we conduct webinars for each funding opportunity each year, so that you can familiarize yourself with the grant review process. And we have an archive of past webinars on our website, and you can also sign up for upcoming webinars. They cover current grant guidelines and frequently asked questions. As I was saying, check the recent grants tab, because you can take a look through all of the previously awarded grants so that you can have an idea of the types of organizations that apply, as well as the types of projects that we see routinely. Tutorials are also posted on the website to help guide applicants through submitting an application. In fact, there's one that walks you through every single field of the grant application process so that you can have an understanding of the types of information that are expected. Once grants are approved by the chairman, we announce them publicly. You can access all of the recent grants through the grant search tool on our website as well. Oh. Another technical difficulty. Additionally, we post selected application narratives from recently funded applications for each program. You can get a sense of what applications look like. And again, you can request feedback on both recommended and rejected applications. We strongly encourage all applicants to utilize this. It can really help improve your next application. So what else does the National Endowment for the Arts do? We have a number of nationwide initiatives beyond our grant programs. One of them is our Creative Forces. It's the NEA's Military Healing Arts Network. It provides creative arts therapies at 11 military clinical sites throughout the country, plus a telehealth program. It serves the special needs of military patients who have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury and other psychological health conditions. In fact, we're growing the program to serve these patients and their families in their home communities. In addition to that, we have the NEA Big Read. It annually supports about 75 dynamic community reading programs, each of which is designed around a single NEA Big Read selection. The titles in the NEA Big Read library vary in theme, genre, settings, and points of view. In fact, here in Puerto Rico, the University of Turabo in Gurabo is a Big Read grantee for 2018-2019. And the book they chose is In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. Also, what else does the NEA do? We support Poetry Out Loud. It's a national arts education program that encourages high school students to learn about poetry through both memorization and performance. Have any of you participated or known anyone who has participated? Excellent. We hope to see as much participation from Puerto Rico as possible. Did anyone watch the live stream last night of the finals by any chance? They were really they were really great. You know, being there is wonderful, but next year, take a look and identify when it's being hosted. It is an amazing event, and it's really great to hear those high schoolers recite poetry the way they do. It was very, very inspirational. Blue Star Museums. It's a collaboration among the National Endowment for the Arts, Blue Star families, and the Department of Defense, as well as museums across the United States. Since the summer of 2010, Blue Star's museums have offered free admission to the nation's active duty military personnel and their families. This includes both the National Guard and the Reserve. And in Puerto Rico, participating museums include the ICP, as well as the Museo de Arte de Ponce and the Museo de Arte de Puerto Rico. So please, if you are a military member or military member family, please take advantage of that. Shakespeare in American Communities is another program we have. It's a program that brings professional theater companies to middle and high school students throughout the country to perform Shakespeare's plays and to conduct educational activities. And next, some important information about the economic statistics of the impact of the arts. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the arts contributed $804 billion to the United States economy in 2016. 4.3% of that, that is 4.3% of the nation's gross domestic product. It's a highly recognizable slice of the pie, and it surprised me that the arts has such an impact, but it is clearly demonstrated and quite evident that the arts is an extremely important sector of our economy, and we are happy to participate in that. This slide really speaks for itself about the powerful impact of the arts sector. The arts sector adds 5 times more to the United States economy than agriculture, and significantly more than other huge sectors such as construction, transportation, and warehousing. And our arts sector is outperforming the growth rate of the United States economy as a whole. And you may be interested to know specific statistics about Puerto Rico. We don't yet have Bureau of Economic Analysis data for Puerto Rico, but what we do have are figures from our own research office that they pulled together from the quarterly census of employment and wages, the QCEW. It shows employment and payroll for selected arts and cultural industries in Puerto Rico. However, I want to stress that these are only partial numbers because the quarterly census doesn't capture certain major industries that produce arts and cultural goods and services, including some very big ones, like the government or kindergarten through post-secondary arts education or construction. However, even with those gaps, this chart shows some great numbers to be very proud of. And we talked about being a panelist before. Please consider being a panelist. Leave us your card if you are interested, or go to the website and fill out the information asking for volunteers. We can't stress this enough. It's a really great way to learn the grant process through the National Endowment for the Arts, and we love to have new panelists review our applications. And finally, thank you. I am here on behalf of the National Endowment for the Arts, as is Andy Mathis. And we are here to answer questions later on after all 3 of us agencies have presented. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for putting up with our momentary technical glitch. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share our grant programs with you.
Is that better? A little bit? Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Connie Bodner, and I would like to add my thanks to all of you for coming today. And we so appreciate the invitation to come to Puerto Rico and spend some time with you. I would like to ask how many of you all might have ever received a grant or applied for a grant with the Institute of Museum and Library Services? Okay. How many people like museums and libraries? Okay, now I feel good. That is great. Well, my job at the Institute is that of a senior program officer. So, and I have the privilege of working with a terrific group of people. All of us are museum or library professionals in a slightly former life. And so we like to think that we have a bit of an understanding and a lot of empathy for people who work in museums and libraries and are trying to make the world a better place because of what those institutions can do. What I'd like to do today is mention briefly who we are, what we do, talk about eligibility for our grant programs, give you an overview of some of our funding programs to the extent that if you hear something that you think might work for you, make a note. I don't expect anybody to take away a full complement of skills and abilities to write a grant proposal, like this afternoon or anything. But if you, I do want you to listen for something that you think might work for you, and then let's talk about it this afternoon. And as Brian mentioned, get in touch with us, and we'll figure out the best way forward. I want to provide some resources for preparing applications. Give you some of our best advice, which is going to sound remarkably similar to NEA's best advice, and probably also NEH's. And then to give you our contact information for future conversations. If you did not get one of the handouts with the slides for this PowerPoint and you would like to have one, I apologize for not bringing enough, but make sure that I have your name and your email, and I will send you a PDF of all of these slides. We are an independent federal grant-making agency. We're on the small side. There are about 70 of us who work together. But we are the primary support source for funding for the museum. I'm sorry, let me try that again. Primary source of federal support for the country's museums and libraries. We fund institutions rather than disciplines, but by funding those institutions, we in fact fund all of the disciplines. Our goal is to help ensure that all Americans have access to museum, library, and information services. We do this primarily by making grants, which is why I think we're all here today. But we also convene groups, we also conduct research, and we publish that, all in the name of helping to strengthen museums and libraries in their efforts to serve their public. We have a strategic plan, and I brought, I think, about 100 copies of that strategic plan. It's important for anyone who's thinking about applying for one of our funding opportunities to know about that booklet, because that informs our grant making. If you did not get a copy today, please know that it's posted as a PDF on our website, but I do encourage you to look at it. In the name of strengthening museums and libraries, we've identified 3 goals for ourselves as an agency. One is to support museums and libraries as mechanisms for promoting lifelong learning. The second is we want to help build the capacity of museums and libraries to improve well-being in their communities. And last but not least is increase public access to the collections and the materials that museums and libraries hold in trust for the public. So who's eligible to apply for our funding? Well, as you might well expect, there's a museums column and there's a libraries column. Under museums, you can see that there's quite the wide variety of institutions here, and not all of them have museum in their name. So if museum is not in your organization's name, I still encourage you to take a look here, because this includes aquariums, arboretums, botanical gardens, nature centers, zoos, as well as what we might consider the more standard art, history, science, technology, and children's museums, right? We also fund colleges and universities, especially the ones that have museums affiliated with them. Organizations that serve museums, federally recognized Native American tribes, and organizations that serve Native Hawaiians. On the library side, it's just about every kind of library that you can imagine. So public, school, college and university, research libraries, digital libraries, as well as library agencies, consortia, and library associations. The key here is to look at the specific eligibility requirements for the program in which you're interested, because they vary a little bit. In addition to this generality, you need to be a 501c3 or a unit of local, state, or tribal government. So who can't apply? For-profit organizations are not eligible, nor are individuals, federally funded institutions, or foreign countries or organizations. However, just because you're not eligible to apply for a grant does not mean that you're not eligible to participate in a grant-funded project. Right? So some of the best projects that we're able to support will be a partnership, but at the middle of it is a museum or a library, and then partners of all kinds that contribute and whose activities are funded by that grant. So don't be put off by the fact if your organization falls into one of these categories or doesn't appear to be eligible at the get-go. All right, let's look at a few of our funding opportunities. The biggest one that we have, and it's typically about 68% of our budget, is a population-based formula grant program, and it's based on the Library Services and Technology Act, which is a long form for LSTA, right? And it's the Grants to States program. So every state, every territory receives an allotment every year for its libraries based on the population of the state or the territory. The allotment for Puerto Rico this year is a little over $1.9 million. Like in all other states and territories, that funding is provided to a state library agency. And here in Puerto Rico, that is the Puerto Rico Department of Education. So if you work for a library or are looking at support for a library, this would be your first stop. Every agency has a 5-year plan where they outline their goals, and that plan is submitted to and approved by IMLS. But you can get to the 5-year plan for Puerto Rico at the URL on our website, and it's depicted in this slide. Take a look and then contact them to see what the process is for accessing that money. These are some highlights of the 5-year plan for Puerto Rico for that grant program. So as you can see, it covers many of the major functions of libraries. A virtual library development for school and public libraries, hardware, software, e-books, database subscriptions, all of the things that are typically tough to come by funding for, we're happy to help cover. Technology workshops, Wi-Fi internet access. Some of this might sound very much like operating costs, and in some cases it is. Programs that supports preschool and readiness and academic achievement for students. We're very interested in helping support those programs. And there are competitive sub-award opportunities, and that simply means that they may be holding another grant program with this funding to which they will entertain applications. So it's quite rich, and I would encourage you to take a look. Second program for libraries is the Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Program. The applicants and recipients through this program are typically information science schools, library and information science schools. The idea is to help build a diverse workforce of librarians who can be responsive to Americans' needs for information. And as we all know, that changes on a near daily basis. These projects can go from 1 to 4 years. Their matching requirement depends on the category, so you want to explore. Now I'm afraid. Am I still afraid? No, I'm unafraid now. All right, good. The grants range from planning to national forum grants, project grants, and research grants, and these do go up to $1 million, so quite the large amount of money. Interesting thing here is that there's a 2-phase application process, and there are only 2 grant programs of ours that have this. One is you turn in a 2-page proposal idea in September. Those 2-pagers are evaluated by a panel, and then the best of the best, according to peer reviewers, are invited to submit full proposals. Dr. Sandy Toro, who is on our library staff and who hails from Mayahuez, nice, right? Has offered to read those pre-proposals for anybody who wants to send them to her, right? And she will read them in Spanish or she will read them in English, whatever you prefer, and give you feedback. So she wanted to make sure that I shared that with you So, and I've got her address, or her email address and her phone number at the end of this presentation. So keep that in mind. If you're curious and you want to explore this opportunity, she would love to connect with you. Yes. Or back here.
Un, dos, tres, un, dos, tres.
Thank you. A miracle has occurred. Oh my. Become very loud. Okay. So, Sandy Toro. Yes, preliminary proposals, happy to take a look at those. Full proposals will be due in March. And that's a pretty decent range of time to go from a pre-proposal to a full proposal. So that's a thing. The other big program in the library side is National Leadership Grants for libraries. And what we aim to do in this program is to support projects that address big problems that plague a good portion of the library and archive world. The other grant programs we've talked about are very specific for individual libraries. This one is often engaged in through a consortium that attack the big problems. Our thinking is that by generating a data set or a toolkit or a model or a protocol that everyone else can copy and adapt as they wish, that we will have done a good thing. So these also are 1 to 4 years based on project category. They range from $100,000 to $1 million. And again, their matching requirements depend on the nature of the program. The same two-stage process for application, a 2-page proposal, and then a full page or a full proposal by March on an invited basis. Sandy's also willing to read these proposals. All right, moving to the museum side. We have 4 grant programs to talk about and 1 technical assistance program. The first up is the technical assistance program. It's not called a grant for a variety of administrative reasons, but the important thing to know here is that through this program you will have a conservator and a building specialist come to your site and look at your collections and your building and then make a prioritized list of recommendations for how to improve collections care. And we're all painfully aware that there are many collections throughout Puerto Rico that might benefit from this service. So please do think of it. If you are a museum with archives, this would be the place to go. This does not work for libraries, I'm sorry to say, but Tatiana will have some comments to make about a similar program there. But if you're a museum, again, broadly defined, and you would like to have this, the applications will be available in November. I would encourage you to fill out that application as soon as you can, because it's not strictly on a first-come, first-served basis, but the money does run out eventually, and it's good to be on the list before that happens. Applications will close in February. Applicants will know whether they've been accepted or not usually by March, so it's pretty quick. There is some monetary contribution required on your part, but it's in relationship to your operating budget. So the smaller your budget, the smaller your obligation. All right. One of the things that lots of museums do is go through the CAP program and then use that recommended list to come to IMLS for money to implement those recommendations, and that works out really well. Okay, Museums for America is our largest grant program for museums. We have about a $19 million budget for this, and we fund about 200 projects a year. The goal of this is to strengthen the ability of an individual museum to serve the public, and that is pretty broad. We divide it up into project categories which spin out of the strategic plan, so again, that's why it's important to take a look at that document. And we have divided it into lifelong learning, so those are exhibitions, programs, teacher training, anything that has to do with somebody learning something in a museum. Second, community anchors and catalysts. We are very convinced that part of a livable, sustainable community has a museum in the middle of it, and we want to help museums live into that opportunity and that role. These projects, and then third one is collection stewardship and public access. So if your collection, we'll talk a little bit more about that in greater detail in a second, but this has to do with helping you take care of, manage, conserve, preserve the collections that you take care of and, for the benefit of the public. These projects can go from 1 to 3 years. They go from $5,000 to $250,000, and they all require a one-to-one match. That match can be cash, but it often is not. It can be staff time, volunteer time, third-party in-kind, all kinds of resources can contribute to that. Let's see, applications for all of the museum programs are November 15th, so plenty of time between today and November, let's say 14th, right? Not to cut it too close. There'll be plenty of time to put together a good proposal. With all of those good things that Museums for America can support, we have taken out an amount of money from that budget and done the same thing for small museums. Same kinds of activities, the same kinds of basic requirements here, but this is earmarked for small museums. The number one question that we get is what? What is small, right? We don't define that. We ask the applicant to define it because it could be small might be in relationship to your community. It might be in relationship to your operating budget or your visitation or your physical plant. But because we fund so many different kinds of museums, we didn't think there was any way that we could quantify what translates to small. So that's up to you. This year was the first year we created that we ran this program, and we were delighted with the response. So people did not have any trouble at all describing what was small in a convincing way, so that was good. Important to note, there's no cost share required, and this goes up to $50,000. Cost share is accepted if you have it, but it's not required. So that's important. November 15th is a deadline. All right, these are some of the activities that would be welcomed in an application to either Museums for America or Inspire in the collection stewardship category. So, and I list them here just so you can see and maybe identify with something your institution might need. So it's any kind of planning for collections management, care, and conservation. New this year, we've always funded it, but we were never very articulate about it, is preparing for natural and man-made disasters in terms of collections. So that can be planning, training for preparedness, developing networks for response, executing strategies for recovery, and developing resilience in advance of the next time. So if you have a project that you want to put together with those kinds of goals, please consider this category within Museums for America or Inspire. We also are happy to support projects that are geared toward cataloging and inventorying and digitizing and registering collections. Oftentimes that's hard money to come by, but we're happy to provide it. Content management systems, computer systems, the computers to run them. Digitization, as I mentioned, surveys, conservation treatments. There are not very many federal agencies that support conservation treatments, and I'm going to take a guess and think that there are many, many treatment needs in Puerto Rico that might benefit from this. Rehousing collections, including buying the storage furniture that you need to put the rehoused collections into. And then environmental improvements for collection storage and exhibit areas. Oddly, we're not allowed to, we can't support improving conditions for human beings, but we can for museum collections. So, another program that I think might be of some interest to you is called Museums Empowered, and we've run this program for 3 years. Its goal is to provide professional development and internal capacity building opportunities for museums. And by that we mean put a project together that will help your museum get better in the way it does its work. And we're wide open to how you want to go about that. What we hear from the field is the 4 focus areas that are most important, that cause people the biggest challenges, are digital technology, diversity and inclusion, evaluation, and organizational management. And we have gotten some stellar proposals in, and we've funded some amazingly good projects. So we'll talk in a minute about how you can get to summaries of those. But if your museum is thinking about reorganizing itself post-hurricanes, needing to maybe take a new look at the way you do business, this could be for a historic house or any of the other, again, broadly defined museums, this would be a really good thing to consider. It's the same money as Museums for America, $5,000 to $250,000, one-to-one cost share required, in a November deadline. And lastly here, we've on the museum side, we have a National Leadership Grants for Museums, and it's exactly the same principle. This is the grant program through which we want to fund efforts to solve big problems. The thinking being, if we solve some of those big problems, then other museums can benefit by the results. We have 3 categories within this. 2 of them require, 2 of them do not require a match, and 1 does. We are not just interested in the big gigantic projects, so we have something called rapid prototyping. That's for a project that you know you have a good idea, you want to try it out. You're not trying to change the world, you just want to poke at something and see if it can make things better. And we have funding available from $5,000 to $50,000 for that, and there's no cost share required. We're happy to support you in that, and it's the only program where we'll say out loud failure is okay. Because oftentimes by failing we learn something. So if it's a project that's going to tell us something, us being the whole museum world, then we would really like to see it. We also fund research projects, and by federal decree, we cannot require a match on research projects. And then those go up from $50,000 to $1 million. And non-research projects do have a one-to-one cost share requirement, and also up to $1 million. In our notice of funding opportunity, we go into considerable detail about what the word research means, because of course there's a federal definition for that. So I'll be happy to talk with anybody about that afterwards, but until then I would just encourage you to take a look at what we've interpreted research to mean. And again, a November 15th deadline. I wanted to share some hints and tips for you too, and it also gives me a chance to use this graphic, which amuses me every time I see it, because it's just like what putting a grant proposal together feels like. But at any rate, so for applying to us, first thing, like my colleagues have said and will say, look at our website. It's where we put an enormous amount of information, and here are the URLs for all of those. But we publish all the notices of funding opportunities, which are the instructions for applying for a grant. We also create webinars for all of our grant programs. We've got another webinar on how to fill out the forms, another webinar on choosing the right grant program. All of those are refreshed every year, and until they are, we keep the previous years available. You can watch them online, or you can download a transcript with the slides for each one of those. We have sample applications that the reviewers have told us are exceptionally good, and we're happy to provide the abstracts, the narratives, and the schedules of completion for those every year. We swap those out when we announce new grants, so if you want to double dip, you can go get the ones that are up there now, and then in about the middle of September there'll be another batch posted, and they are good resources. Speaking of resources, we put up our guidance for reviewers. So everything that we will ask reviewers to do, you can see in advance. So it's, we don't give you the answers to the test questions, but we sure do give you the test questions, so you can see what people will be looking for. We also have a search awarded grants features. You can look by grant program, state, topic, keyword, date, all kinds of other things, and get about a 150-word summary of that particular grant. And then all of our publications are available as PDFs online. So if there were any of the booklets that I brought today that you didn't get a copy of, please know that it's available there. We cannot stress this registration requirement enough. We do not create these systems. We are users of them just like you will be, but you must have a DUNS number. You use that to register with SAM.gov. You use that to register with grants.gov. Grants.gov is the portal through which you submit your application. We are not allowed to take applications any other way. So that's an important thing. There is no fee for any of this, although there are ne'er-do-wells that will tell you otherwise. And you'll see, if you type in sam.gov in a Google search, you'll get some websites that will tell you they'll do this for you for $500. There's absolutely no reason to pay anybody $500 to do this for you. You can do it on your own. They can't do it any faster or any better. So just allow yourselves some time. Don't give anybody any money to do this. And you'll be all set. If you are already registered, as Brian mentioned, the SAM.gov registration expires every year. They send you an email. In the sad case where the person who got your email last year may no longer be with you, you may never know that. So it would be very important to go to SAM.gov, find your registration, which anyone can do, and make sure that, that you know what your expiration date is. I always like to tell folks in universities, if it's not your job to take care of the SAM.gov registration, go find out whose it is and become their very best friend. Cookies work. The same with grants.gov. There's a username and a password, and you can't wait until the day before this is due and expect that to be a friendly experience. You've got to have that in place beforehand. All right. The next thing, I'll often in workshops hear that people want to start with their budget because nobody applies for a grant if they don't need money, right? That's the point. And we always advise against that because you get into trouble really fast. So don't go for the money first, go for the idea. And really flesh out your idea to the greatest extent that you can, and then be sure you're in the right grants program. And this is where a program officer can help you. You know, this is where you might give us a call or shoot us an email and say, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? Is it Inspire? Is it Museums for America? Is it a CAP? You know, what do you think? We're happy to talk with you about that. But make sure that your project goals line up with those of the grant program. If they don't, change your goals or change your grant program, but they've got to match. It's the first thing that we'll look for, and it's the first thing that reviewers look for. Then think about your work plan. If you know what the problem is you want to resolve, then you have to be able to say, to do that. No.
Sí.
Thank you so much. It's truly a miracle, a day of miracles. At any rate, decide who's going to do what, when, how, and for how much money. Which I'm sure is what these people did when they set out to make their garden. Think about the staff, think about consultants, think about, if you don't have consultants, think about the criteria that you're going to need to go find one. Make all of that into a list. Then pull together your necessary support materials, right? The anxiety and the fear has not even kicked in yet because this is all really pretty easy stuff to do. So resumes, position descriptions, price quotes, floor plans, if you're going to put in new storage furniture or something like that, or do an exhibition, reports of studies, and photographs. Reviewers love photographs. And we don't limit you on the number of photographs that you can put in, but it really helps reviewers understand what you're up against. And then there will be certain boilerplate materials that you need to prepare for every grant. And this will work not only across IMLS, but sometimes with NEA and NEH as well. We need to have your proof of nonprofit status, which is a letter from the IRS. We need to, in our case, we need an organizational profile, 1 page where you tell us about your institution. A strategic plan summary if you're applying to Museums for America or to Inspire, because that grant, both of those grant programs are designed to help you live into your strategic plan, so we need a summary of that. And then if you have a federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, pull that out and have that at the ready as well. You'll need to submit that too. Now you're ready to draft your narrative, but you've got all of the pieces in place that you need to do that. Our advice on this is to answer the questions in the order in which we ask them. And I often like to say, we so appreciate creativity, but for heaven's sakes, don't do it while you're writing the narrative in your grant program. Just follow the steps, because you'll make it easy for the reviewers to find what they're looking for. And I've also heard other reviewers give the advice of construct it like a novel. You answer the questions, but make the reviewer want to read the next paragraph. So maybe that's where the creativity comes in. But don't mix things up too much, because you want them to find what they're looking for easily. Show how your project goals line right up with those of the grant program. That's really important. Explain how your project addresses some key need or problem or challenge. Federal government doesn't fund general operating support anymore. We all want this money to make something better. So help us understand and help reviewers understand how that's going to be with the project that you're proposing. Demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, that you've got a thorough understanding of current best practices and knowledge about the subject matter. Ensure that your work plan makes sense. Do the early stuff first, and the last to be done, make sure that shows up last. And when we get some strange applications where the final activity shows up first, and people question the ability of that institution to carry out a project adequately. Tell us how you're going to define and measure success. That's going to be different for every project, but we want you to be successful. You want you to be successful. Help us understand what that means to you and how you're going to get there. And then be sure the parts fit together. And primarily by that we mean make sure the budget makes sense with what you said you were going to do in your narrative. Now you get to the budget, and by this time it's pretty easy. You just want to make sure that you've got all your expenses covered, that you know they're allowable. And how do you know that? You go back to the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or you also can go to the federal cost principles and to make sure. There's not a lot in IMLS that's not eligible, but some things that are construction, restoration, parties, and alcohol. So, but pretty much anything that a normal museum and library would want to do, with the exception of the construction stuff, we wish we had funding for that, but we don't, would be allowable, but it's always good to check. Then decide what you're going to charge to IMLS and what you're going to charge, what you're going to provide as part of your cost share if you need to have one. And then there's a document called Budget Justification where you just show your work, you explain your math, how you got to the numbers that you put in your budget. And then we love to say, check your math, and then check it again. And then you put all of this together, and it's just some hints here that I like to share is keep in mind the communities that you are serving. That's at the heart of everything that we do. It's what we look for, and help us understand the good that you will do and make that easy for us to buy into. And keep in mind why your work is important. Remove generalities, acronyms, and jargon, and that's always odd for a federal employee to say because we all live by acronyms, but just keep in mind that the reviewer may not know your acronyms, and so you want to make it, again, easy for them to get to the information that they're looking for. So be straightforward in your choice of language. Be sure to complete all of the required forms that you need to. And again, there's a table of application components in our Notice of Funding Opportunity, so you can use that as a checklist to make sure that's there. If you get a chance, get a colleague to review your proposal once it's all done, and pick somebody who hasn't been involved in writing it at all, because they can see things that you might not be able to. And then last but not least, submit early, right? The grants.gov system timestamps your application on Eastern Standard Time. And if it is, our saddest story is 9 seconds late, and we weren't able to take it. So if your application comes in even a smidgen after the 11:59 deadline, 11:59 p.m. deadline on the application due date, we are not allowed to review it. So you surely, everybody's computer can hiccup, everybody can lose an internet connection. Don't wait till the very end to do that. Our review system is very much like you'll hear from my colleagues here. It's all peer review. They are museum and library professionals who know the world in which we work. They know the needs of communities, and they can share promising practices and recognize good quality project proposals. Some of our programs have one tier, some have two. In the two-tiered programs, it's typically 50% of the projects are eliminated from further consideration the first time around. But at the end of the day, our director makes the funding decisions. We supply all kinds of information in addition to the peer reviewers' scores for your application. But we also look at your funding record with us, whether you've got any reports due for a previous project. That's a deal breaker. But our director takes into account things like geography and project type, and of course the overall budget that we have to work with. I do like to mention that we will provide you with all of the verbatim reviewer comments. You'll see exactly what everybody said about your proposal and the scores, and folks have told us that those are really, really useful for the people who get funded. They can make their projects better. For the people who are not funded, they can make their proposals better the next time. Last words. Call or email a program officer. Please, please, please do that. We enjoy it to begin with, but we also think that we can add some value. We'll help you figure out which program that might be best for your project. We're happy to answer questions about the guidelines. We're happy to share our observations that we've gathered from panelists about projects like yours. Also, watch our website. There are new programs that come up with some frequency. There might be some new initiatives, and there might be some change deadlines. Best way to stay connected to that is to sign up for Primary Source, which is our monthly e-newsletter, and that's where all announcements about new programs and new deadlines will be posted. And there are also some other interesting stories there, particularly about other grantees and the projects that they're carrying out. And we have a decent representation on social media as well, so that can be a good resource. Here's some names of people to contact. All of this is on our website too, but I've listed the programs that we've spoken about today on the right, and a person to call, and if the person that you call or email can't answer your question, we will make sure that we connect you with someone who does. Again, Sandy Toro, under the first name under libraries, is the contact who will read pre-proposals if you want to connect with her. Madison Bowles is the person that coordinates the work with Department of Education for LSTA in Puerto Rico, and my understanding is that she'll be visiting here in the middle of May to do a site visit. I'm happy to take anything that you want to have, any kind of contact that you want to send, but I typically take care of our collections grants, and as does Mark Feidel, who takes care of the Inspire program. And Mark Isaacson is the person to connect with on Museums Empower, that capacity building program. So I think that's all I wanted to share. Thank you all so much for coming, and I hope to see you this afternoon.
Use it? Someone's going to use it?
Oh, well, yeah.
Here we have one that works.
Let's see.
I'm going to put, nope, not going to do that.
That's the
Excellent. So I won't touch anything. I think we're good. Yes? Everyone can hear me, no feedback. Great. So we have an announcement that if anyone needs to leave, to please use the back door in the corner. Thank you. Okay, so I am Tatiana Ausema. I am a senior program officer with the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we, on behalf of all of us, we're so glad that you're all here, and we really appreciate all the work that you're clearly doing in the arts and the humanities, right? You wouldn't be here if you weren't making a change and doing good work. So just thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing in your communities all over Puerto Rico, we really look forward to hearing more about them this afternoon. So I'm going to be giving two separate short PowerPoints this morning. I'm going to first go over the what NEH is, similar to my colleagues, and talking a little bit about our process, and then I'll do a separate PowerPoint where we'll talk a little bit about our divisions. So unlike NEA and IMLS, NEH has 7 divisions and 36 different grant programs. So I cannot speak about each one of them, nor would you want me to speak about each one of them. So I will give an overview of the divisions, and then this afternoon we can speak a little bit more about some of those programs, and I can direct you to the appropriate program officer for each one of those. There we go. Okay, so as you've heard, NEH and our sister agency, National Endowment for the Arts, were created by Congress in 1965. And our founding legislation explains how the arts and humanities promote public good through progress and scholarship. We support work that engages scholars and the general public in humanistic inquiry, believing that understanding the world requires an understanding of history. And since our inception, NEH has awarded more than $5.6 billion for humanities projects through more than 64,000 grants. Approximately $5 million of that has gone to Puerto Rico, and a little bit over $1 million came directly after Maria through the form of emergency grants directly to institutions and through the state council. So you'll see on this slide that the work of NEH is very broad, and it's broadly based on discipline. So we fund museums, we fund libraries, but we also fund archives, we fund public radio stations, we fund universities. So we're very open to a range of different projects. We are a federal grant-making agency. Despite the fact that our name is National Endowment for the Humanities, we are not an endowment. We are funded each year through the appropriations process in Congress using taxpayer dollars. So you've heard about the rigorous review process. Part of that is because we need to make sure that we are using taxpayer dollars wisely, that we're funding the best projects in the humanities that we possibly can. And this is our building in Washington, D.C., where both the National Endowments for the Arts and the Humanities is located. And our staff. NEH has approximately 170 individuals that work for us, both on the grant-making side and also in the administration side. And so there are many people who are standing by to help you answer your questions as you have them over the next few weeks. So the first question we often get is, what are the humanities? So humanities is not humanitarian efforts. People often wonder if we fund humanitarian efforts. We don't. We don't fund arts programs. That's the job of the National Endowment for the Arts. But apart from that, we take a very, very broad view of what the humanities could encompass. They encompass history, philosophy, archaeology, and social science if it involves humanistic methods. And we put it on you to explain to us how your project relates to the humanities. In the Division of Preservation and Access, which is my division, we deal with collections and museums, libraries, physical things that you can hold and touch. In that division, we take an even broader view of the humanities. We will fund science collections if they're used to tell the history of science. We will fund music collections and arts collections if it's the actual objects and it's used to teach art history or the history of music. So if you are an arts organization,
If you can demonstrate a connection to the humanities, the history of your discipline, your project is likely eligible for funding, likely through the Division of Preservation and Access. The bright line that we will not fund living collections. So if you're from a botany museum or a botany collection or a garden, we will not fund the plants. But if you have specimens that are mounted in your archives, we can fund the preservation and access of those mounted non-living specimens. Same goes for zoos. We can fund mounted animals that have passed on. We cannot fund the care and keeping of living animals, even though those are both collections. And these are some examples of the range of humanities, various disciplines. And we're looking at it throughout the divisions. We're looking towards moving forward, thinking about new trends in the humanities. So please, in your application, talk about how your project connects to things that are happening in your field, new trends, methods, moving forward. So you'll see lots of programs that involve digital technology. A range of our divisions fund digital technology, interdisciplinary partnerships. All of those strengthen your application to us. So this is a slide from 2017. In 2018, we actually awarded $180 million. Thankfully, our budget went up. We anticipate awarding similar amount this year, if not a little bit more. So you've heard a lot about program officers. This is Jill Austin. She is one of our program officers in the Division of Public Programs. The program officer should be your best friend. Reach out to them. Get to know the names of people in the division that most relates to your work. We are here to help. Most of us have a background in the area that we work in. So, for example, Jill is a museum professional. She was a curator for years. I was trained as a conservator and worked in preservation for years. So you'll find that program officers often know a lot about your field, and if not, we want to learn because it helps us be better at our job. So please do reach out to us early, often, repeatedly. These are also, program officers are a great first line to understand what might be changing. So NEH grant programs change every year. The guidelines, some of them stay the same year to year, many of them change. So the program officer will be the person who can kind of give you the heads up, well, this year, maybe we're not going to be funding in this area. Next year, we're considering it, or vice versa. And I just mentioned this, the program officers are going to be answering questions, provide feedback. We do read draft proposals in most of our grant programs, not all of them. It will say in the guidelines whether or not we offer the opportunity to read a draft. But we answer questions in every single grant program. So don't avoid reaching out to us because we don't read drafts. Please do give us questions, send us emails. In terms of eligibility, most of our grant programs can only be awarded to institutions. They cannot be awarded to individuals. The only exceptions are in our Division of Fellowships, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit more detail later. If you are independent and associated with an institution and the institution can apply on your behalf, that is fine. You can have that. The primary applicant must be a U.S. institution and must have 501c3 nonprofit status, so the national 501c3. Or be a state or local government. State or local governments are also eligible. I'm just making sure that I have covered all of the eligibility. I think that covers it. And that's what I was looking for. We're not able to support any programs that get into political advocacy. So in the humanities, if you're thinking about putting together a discussion group or putting together a summer seminar, anything that advances a particular political topic, we also cannot fund at NEH. As my fellow colleagues here have said, the website is an amazing source of information for all things NEH. But as a federal agency, our website is not necessarily easy to navigate or use. So spend some time with our website, get to know it. It's changed a little bit since this slide was made, but it's a similar similar structure still. Do I have a pointer? I do not have a pointer. Maybe I'll use the mouse. There we go. So if you go up to the section with grants, it will give you the opportunity to search for grants by division or by activity. I would encourage you to search by division. The activity, while it sounds appealing, is not very useful. So go through, look at the various grant information in each division, and that will give you some information about each program. From there, you will be, this is probably not very clear, but you will be able to get the guidelines along with the deadline and the division. And I would encourage you to read guidelines as much as possible. They are long, they are bureaucratic, but you do need to know what's in them in order to understand what type of information we're looking for. They'll tell you who can and who cannot apply for a particular grant, what the grants can and cannot support, what an application should include, and how applications will be evaluated. And that evaluation criteria is essential to read because reviewers will be asked to comment on each one of the review criteria during the panel process. Also, on this page is a link to recently funded applications. So this is the program information page. If you see a yellow box like this, it means that the guidelines that are up are not current, but they're still available. And so I would still encourage you to read those guidelines and then reach out to the program officer, list it and say, are the guidelines from last year still relevant? Can I use them to start preparing my application? Many times you can. Many times the program officer will be able to give you a heads up about what may change in the next year. So even if it says that it's not current, please go ahead and take a look at those guidelines. The program page will also include links to sample application narratives. Please don't use them verbatim, but it does give you a sense of what types of applications have been funded in each program, how they might be organized. These are the best of the best that we receive, and it may give you a sense of what type of projects we would fund, and hopefully you see yourself in some of those sample application narratives. Before I go to grants.gov, I'm going to go back. We also have a page where you can search for recently funded applications, or all of our funded applications back to 1965, actually. And you can search those by topic. You can search them by location. So if you'd like to find colleagues in your part of Puerto Rico that have received grants, just to connect to them, find out how they did it, you can find that out through our search page. You can find other grants within the division. You can find grants within programs, applications that might have similar collection types to yours. So spend also some time searching through that. You'll get a summary of each grant. Some of our programs include white papers. So at the end of the grant, we ask the grantee to provide a white paper that details lessons learned, what they did, what they would do differently. And those are particularly helpful for programs that do include that. Grants.gov. We can't say it enough. It's out of our control as program officers or as an agency to do anything if you can't get your application in grants.gov. So please become best friends with your grants.gov person, know the passwords. If somebody leaves, make sure you have that password before they leave from their position because it is very difficult to re-enroll. So our process is very similar to the process of the other agencies. Once we get your application, you're sitting back and waiting, but we are working feverishly behind the scenes to sort your application with like applications. We've been in our Preservation Assistance Grants program that I'll talk about soon. We have fortunately received enough applications from Puerto Rico that we have a panel just of Puerto Rican applications at this point, which is wonderful. We would love to get enough from all of you in our other grant programs to be able to just have some regional panelists, because then we can bring in panelists from Puerto Rico that know your institutions better. So we sort them by panel sometimes, or by region. Sometimes they're sorted by institution type. Sometimes they're sorted by activity. And then we recruit panelists that have specialty in those particular areas. Each review panel will have a humanities expert. The very first question we ask our reviewers is, what is the significance to the humanities of this proposal? Make that easy for them to answer. You know this is going to be their first question. What is the significance to the humanities of this proposal? It may be the activity, it may be the collection, but make that very clear in the application. So there'll be a humanities scholar, and then there'll be people that might be familiar with the collection type or the work you're trying to do, former program directors, and all of you would have the opportunity to be panelists as well. I'll go back this way. So the panelists will give each application a grade, and these are the grades that you will get afterwards to find out more if you request feedback. After that, we as staff, so we have the panel recommendations, then we provide staff recommendations. All of that information goes to the National Council on the Humanities. The National Council on the Humanities meets 3 times a year, and so we make awards 3 times a year. We make awards in July, November, and March. And so that's when our National Council meets. The National Council will ask questions. They'll provide recommendations to the chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and by law, he is the only one who has the authority to make grants. So when you receive feedback and reviewers' notes, please know that that's just a portion of the process, and that those reviewers' notes, while important, are not the only determining factor as to why your application may be funded or not funded. The chairman will make his decision, and then we notify all of you whether the award is offered or declined. So we love reviewers. We love recruiting reviewers. So if you're interested in reviewing for us, it is one of the best ways to learn about the process. And we are often looking for what we call unicorns, which are people that have a specialty in various areas, maybe from a geographic area. So please let us know. Send an email. I have a lot of cards up there. You can tell us, you can attach a CV, give us some information about your background so that we can add you into our reviewer pile. And there's a group of reviewers. So finally, for this section, some grant writing tips that are going to be very similar to what you've been hearing all morning. Consider the funding source. In our case, we're National Endowment for the Humanities. You need to make a case that whatever you're doing is a humanistic endeavor of some sort. Read the guidelines carefully. They're long, they're bureaucratic, they're very important. Be explicit. Tell us, don't use acronyms, tell us exactly what you're going to do. Tell us exactly why you're going to do it. Show us why your project is important and worthy of federal funding. Include information in your appendices. So each one of our programs has a page limit. However, the appendices do not have a page limit. Be judicious in what you put in there, but there's a lot of things, photographs that might take up space in your narrative, or master plans or strategic plans. All of those can go in your appendices. They don't need to go in your narrative. Be realistic in your work plan. We see a number of applications where they, I think, feel that they can't include things like vacations and holidays that might slow down the process. Make sure that when you're calculating how long something is going to take, you're going to have staff that might need to be trained. You might need to recruit volunteers or interns. You might need to hire someone and then they're going to have a week of training before they're allowed to work on the project. Include all of that in your work plan and then add a little bit more because it usually takes longer than you're going to think. Sign up for grants.gov early, check your registration, make sure it works, and submit your application and wait, and wait. And wait. You have to start thinking about a year in advance of when you would want your project to start about what your application would look like. For example, for some programs that might have a July 15th deadline, which is, we have a number of programs that have a July 15th deadline, those notifications are not going to go out until December, and then the projects will start in January, sometimes even later, depending on the program. So it's about a 9-month review process. The guidelines come out 3 months before that. So be thinking at least a year in advance. It is never too early to call the program officer because they'll be able to give you a timeline and when you need to start thinking about things. So prepare early. Make your case in your application, demonstrating significance, providing context. Remember your audience. Your audience is going to have some familiarity with your area, with whatever you're proposing, but they're not going to be the expert that you are. You need to provide your expertise and tell us in the application. And make the information easy to find. If there is a review criteria that asks for a specific thing, help us find it. If there's something in the narrative that you provide supporting documentation in the appendice, tell us. Say, look in appendice number 5 on page 12. Help provide a roadmap to the things that you think are important and you want reviewers to see. Know what is and isn't allowed. Budget what is and isn't allowed in each program changes each year. So know the budget and talk to the program officer. Pay attention to details, proofread. And then after announcements are made, we do not automatically send reviewers comments. You need to request them from us. A simple email, we'd like the reviewers' comments, and we will send them out. Whether the application is recommended for funding or not, you have access to the reviewers' comments, and we send them verbatim. And please do resubmit. For a lot of projects, they may be excellent projects. You may receive a number of excellent grades, and we just didn't have enough funding that year. So please don't think that if an application was rejected, it means that we never want to see it again. Most of the time, we would love to see it again. So please reach out to the program officer as you plan to resubmit. So if you have any questions, here's my contact information. There is I have business cards on the table over there you're welcome to pick up. I'm going to do a quick switch here, and we'll go through some of our divisions quickly to give you a sense of the type of activities that NEH can support. Okay, I'm going to start with the Division of Preservation and Access, partially because that's my division, and the one that I will talk a little bit more in depth about for certain programs, but also partially because I noticed on the sign-up sheets that there's a number of individuals that said they were interested in access-related grants. And so this is the division that deals with access. The best way to think about preservation and access is we're the division that deals with things. If you have a physical collection that you can touch and you want to do something with, you might want to catalog it, you might need to do conservation, you might need to protect it from the elements, you might need to digitize it and get it out to the public. Preservation and access is your division for physical or born digital objects. So the main focus of our division is to make available collections. So those collections could be a whole range of things. They can be manuscripts, they can be born digital, they can be magnetic media, so tapes and VHS. And we fund a range of institution types in this division. As Connie was saying, we do fund libraries as well as museums, archives, and historic societies. And in our various grant lines, we support digitization, arrangement and description, cataloging, encyclopedias, assessment, so a range of things that are dealing with those collections. And this is an example of a map that was cataloged and digitized as part of a preservation and access project. So for this slide, please ignore the dates. These deadlines have changed a little bit, and they're all online. Although the first one, Humanities Collections and Reference Resources, it still has a July 15th deadline. Let's see. Actually, I'm not going to go through each of those. Okay, I'll go back and talk with these. There we go. So the first one I'll just talk briefly about, Humanities Collections and Reference Resources. If you are interested in digitizing a collection, so you're not going to be creating something new, you're going to take existing collection items and digitize them in some form and provide access to them. You could provide access through a website, you could be providing access through a collection management system, you could be providing access through cataloging. Humanities Collections and Reference Resources is the program that you want to look at. This provides planning funds up to $50,000 that will allow you to start thinking about how you're going to do this. So if you have a collection that's unprocessed, if you might need to bring in a archival consultant, if you need to use some funds to convince everyone in your institution that needs to be involved in a project to sit down and plan and how are we going to digitize, the foundations level is the right level in this program. Once you know what you want to do, you might need to hire an archivist, you might need to hire a subject matter expert to write about your various materials. Then you could apply for an implementation project, which is up to $350,000. And as you might expect, the competitiveness of the upper level, $350,000, is an order of magnitude higher than the funding for the $50,000 planning level. So if you're unsure which level that your project might fit in, call the program officer. Usually we recommend starting with the planning level, but you are not required to have a planning grant from NEH in order to apply for the implementation level. The other program that's on this slide that I want to mention briefly is the Sustaining Cultural Heritage Collections. That title is completely opaque, but what that program does is it provides support at both the planning and implementation level for infrastructure surrounding care of collections. For example, if you need to improve your HVAC system, not for human comfort, but for your collection, Sustaining Cultural Heritage Collections will fund new HVAC systems. It will fund moving a collection from a vulnerable space in a library or archive into a less vulnerable space. We look for programs that incorporate sustainability or resilience into the application for that. And so, for example, if you need new shelving that's going to lift collections up off the floor, if you need to, again, get facilities, conservation, preservation, your registrars all in one room to think holistically about your collections, which is what we really want, and that's how you best preserve your collections. At the planning level, you can do that. We want to see interdisciplinary teams for that program. On this slide, I'm going to talk very briefly about the preservation assistance grants to smaller institutions. This program is similar to the collections assessment program that Connie mentioned. The preservation assistance grants for smaller institutions are sort of the entry-level NEH preservation program. Those are awards up to $10,000 to bring in consultants or to implement collections care policies and policies and procedures. So under the Preservation Assistance Grants program, you might bring in a conservator to assess the nature of your collections, to develop a preservation plan. You might bring in a archival consultant to look at description and arrangement. But what may especially be of interest is this is our only program that will provide for conservation treatment. And it only provides for conservation treatment in federally declared disaster areas. So you can apply in this program for up to $10,000 to do treatment on individual or a group of objects that may have been damaged. You do need to have a qualified conservator and a conservation plan. But if you're interested in conservation, this is the program for you. So the next program I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about is challenge grants. My colleagues, both of them mentioned that their agencies don't fund construction. NEH does fund construction. We only fund it within this challenge grants program, though. Challenge grants is the only program at NEH that requires third-party cost share. We do not require cost share on any of our other programs, either voluntary or non-voluntary required cost share. Challenge grants must be matched either 3 or 4 to 1, and I'll explain the difference in a minute, by third-party cash funds. So you may not use staff time. They have to. It is essentially a program designed to leverage federal dollars to do additional fundraising. So the Challenge Grants program will allow for the infrastructure and capacity program It aims to help humanities institutions secure long-term funding for core activities. And if you're applying, you can apply for up to $750,000 in this program. Up to $750,000, it's a 4-to-1 match, so you have to raise $4 of non-federal funds for every $1 of federal funds. $500,000 and below, it's a 3-to-1 match. So 1 to $500,000, you have to raise $3 of non-federal funds to receive $1 of federal funds. From $500,000 up to $750,000, you have to raise $4 of non-federal money for every dollar of federal money. And these grants will support large-scale construction and renovation, the purchase of equipment, establishment of conservation or preservation facilities. So if you need to establish a conservation program, you can do it through that. If you need to do long-term conservation treatment, you can also fund it in this program, but this would be a 10-year, 16-year conservation plan. It's not going to fund the conservation of a particular object. And it also allows for funding for sustaining digital architecture. So if you're upgrading servers, you need to hire someone that's going to continue to migrate all of your digital content. If you think it's something that you could raise funds for, it is eligible within the Challenge Grant Program. And then this is the contact information for the Challenge Grants office. So for the next divisions, I'm just going to go very quickly through and talk very broadly about their programs. I can answer some specific questions this afternoon if that's helpful. And I'm going to make sure I get my notes in order so that I can give the correct information about each program. So the first program is going to be public programs. And public programs is our division that will do museum exhibitions, media projects, really our public-facing division. Their project types are going to be media producers, historic sites, libraries. Museums should be on this list because they fund museum exhibitions. They're going to support digital infrastructure. There we go. They also support digital infrastructure. I mentioned earlier that we have digital initiatives in a number of our different divisions. Public programs is a good place to go if you want to use an existing technology, that part's critical, an existing technology to provide a resource for the public. So an app, a game, a website that is public facing. They also fund media projects, so if you're interested in doing a film, cinema, these media projects grants are exceptionally competitive. They're one of the most competitive programs at NEH, but they offer funding levels in both development and production. So you'll see a lot of our grant lines are designed to kind of help you at the beginning, help with planning before you get to these larger implementation grants. And this is the contact information. Nope, not quite yet. There we go. There's the contact information for our public programs division. And I do have a handout. I think all of them up here were taken, but I have some additional copies that have individual program officers for each grant program within each division. So the next is our division of research programs. Research programs is if you are a individual applicant, this is the only division that will fund individual applications to NEH. And where did research go? There we go. So the Division of Research Grant Programs support individuals and teams of scholars that are pursuing advanced research in the humanities for scholarly audiences, general audiences, or both. And the programs split. So here's the Division of Research Programs statement. So the division generally splits their programs into two families. So the left column is a column for individual scholars for awards lasting between 4 and 12 months. So they're fairly short. And then on the right are opportunities for institutional grants or collaborations that will last between 1 and 3 years. And then these are the type of activities and the products that that division creates. And they're exactly what you'd expect: books, lots of books, some websites, resources, in that way. And then the contact information for research. You'll see a trend: research at NEH.gov, education at NEH.gov is our general contact information for each division. Division of Education, they offer grants primarily to secondary higher institutions of higher learning. So they do some K through 12, but it's primarily colleges and universities, libraries, museums. And education is, if you're getting a group of people together to study a topic, if you're going to be working with primary resources and developing some educational tools, that's going to be through the Division of Education. And I'll talk about individual programs a little bit more this afternoon. So the Office of Digital Humanities, a number of people have also expressed interest in digital products. The Office of Digital Humanities is your best friend if you want to do something new. So you're not using existing infrastructure, you're not using existing resources, you're creating something new, essentially from whole cloth for a digital resource. So Digital Humanities is going to be both creating that resource as well as providing training for those resources. And you may be creating, so it's going to be, think of it as a research and development in the area of digital humanities. That's where they're going to be funding projects. So this is a great project where they created this layered map of various places within St. Paul's. So digital humanities has a number of different levels. Again, planning, implementation, and then they also have the Humanities Open Book Program that allows for digitization of open source or books that are in the public domain to be used in educational settings. So I think the final division to talk about is the Office of Fed-State Partnership. And like my colleagues, they actually receive the majority of NEH funding. But the Office of Fed-State Partnership, they provide direct funding to the state and territorial humanities councils. So a lot of the work being done here in Puerto Rico is coming through the Office of Fed-State Partnership. And they are often NEH's eyes and ears on the ground. We work very closely with them to understand what is needed in the communities and try to make our grant programs as responsive as possible. So after Maria, we were on the phone with the Puerto Rican Humanities Council. They helped us distribute our emergency grants. They were very helpful at identifying institutions that might benefit getting the word out. So get to know your Humanities Council. Know who they are, get to know their grant programs. They're often a good entry level or point of entry for developing your grant proposal. The grants that they offer are often shorter, easier to apply for, and they're a good entryway into the work of NEH to build up your programs. And Fed-State has lots of slides. Let's get to the contact information. There we go. So there's our contact information for the Office of Fed-State Partnership. So I think that brings me, it brings me to the end of this presentation. So I just wanted to thank all of you on behalf of my colleagues, since I'm the last speaker, and that we really look forward to talking to each one of you this afternoon as time allows. Okay. Sure, I'm sorry. There you go. Great. Thank you very much.
Whoops. Okay. Yeah. Thank you again for coming. We can entertain general questions for a while, and then after a lunch break, we'll be breaking down into smaller groups where we can entertain questions for each different agency. Thank you again.
Ya estamos. We are ready. We're done. In the morning. Okay. Ya se completó la sesión de talleres durante el día. Nosotros vamos a estar enviando las presentaciones que ellos nos hagan llegar en los listados que nos proveyeron. Si alguien no firmó, todos firmaron, dejaron su información. Sí, tengo gente del municipio de Mayagüez, saludos. Entonces, durante la tarde, les invitamos, ¿verdad? Aquí en el recinto hay varios lugares que pueden almorzar. Tenemos el centro de estudiantes y hay comida, mucha variedad. Aquí tenemos el bistro, también en el sótano. Durante la tarde, a partir de la 1, ellos van a estar recibiendo en el 202A para las consultas individuales. Sí entiendo que va a venir alguien de FEMA. Si tienen algún caso en específico que no se les haya dado la información, pues por favor nos pueden enviar al correo electrónico, al mío particular, que yo también se los puedo canalizar las preguntas. El mío es carmenp.pares@upr.edu. Carmen P de Patricia .pares, P-A-R-E-S, @upr.edu. Todas las preguntas que tengan, pues por favor las pueden enviar ahí o en los listados que se dejaron. ¿Disculpa? Sí, carmenp.pares@upr.edu. Les invitamos, ¿verdad?, a que en las horas de la tarde, en el 202A, se van a estar recibiendo, ellos van a estar haciendo las consultas individuales en los diferentes temas. Así, sí, ¿va a venir alguien de FEMA? Ya mismo vamos a contestar eso. Sí, en la tarde va a venir alguien de FEMA a las consultas individuales. 202A. Sí. Del Instituto de Cultura, la doctora. El orden en que se van a estar recibiendo las personas. Yo voy a poner unos listados para que se anoten en el lugar, en cada una de las, porque son unos módulos, como unas oficinas privadas para que tengan, ¿verdad?, su espacio. Y voy a poner, según tema, pongo unas listas para que se anoten y ellos los van a ir llamando. Lo que sucede es que por experiencias previas muchas personas se anotan, se les separa espacio y luego no llegan. Lo que vamos a hacer es que por orden de llegada voy a tener unos listados para que se puedan anotar y que ellos los vayan llamando. ¿Qué hora es? Para darles un espacio a ellos, a todos que puedan almorzar, una hora después que nos vayamos de aquí. 11:40, pues vamos a poner a la 1. Permiso.
Buen día. Personas que estén interesados en hacer preguntas abiertas en estos momentos, tenemos varios minutos para hacerlas, que podríamos trabajar eso. Y por la tarde, de igual manera, van a estar en diferentes grupos por agencia, que los interesados pueden acercarse y hacer las preguntas concretas a ellos. Que si tienen alguna pregunta abierta, se la pueden hacer a ellos ahora. Sí.
Hola, instituciones que no tengan exención 501C3, ¿pueden tener un fiscal sponsor para poder recibir los grants?
Applicants must be 501c3 or city or state government or university or tribal nation. So we don't allow fiscal sponsors. We're not allowed to allow fiscal sponsors. So if someone else is a 501c3 and they're the official applicant, you can be a partner in the project.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Hello.
Since you have sample application for the application process in the website, if I have to submit the final documents of a grant, can I find a example in there too, in the web page?
Of final reports or of
Yes.
applications?
Yes, I need to fill out the final report.
We don't usually have examples of final reports.
Okay.
On the website, just applications.
Okay, thank you.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Ok, pues con eso entonces le damos las gracias a todos por su asistencia y los que estén interesados después de la hora de almuerzo a la 1 en el 202A. Muchas gracias entonces por su asistencia. Buen día.